Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your guest co-host, Andrew Gombas. Today, we're going to be recapping the year of 2022 in the UFC. It's finally behind us. I mean, a lot to cover. Andrew, welcome to Half the Battle.
Thanks for having me, man. Looking forward to recapping a fun year.
So am I. I mean, just for everyone that's tuning in, we're going to talk about, the obvious ones, the KOs of the years, the fight of the year, this and that. But then we're going to also go a little bit off the cusp, whether it's rookie of the year, which I think is something cool to talk about. We're going to introduce for the very first time the Perrin Jobber of the Year award and the Darrick Minner Stunt of the Year award, as well as talk about our best and worst bets of 2022. Lots to discuss. So without further ado, Andrew, let's get right down to business, because the first category is the knockout of the year. And I have a feeling that we're going to agree on our top pick. But before we get to that top pick, just to give some shine to some other great knockouts that have taken place in 2022. I mean, firstly, I love that Jamal Hill versus Johnny Walker knockout. I mean, when was the last time you saw a reaction like that on a knockout? Just the way he fell was truly something. There was that. Also, Chandler and T-Ferg. I mean, look, I know Ferguson's not in the best point of his career right now, but no one's ever front kicked him in the face, to the point where we were thinking, like, they're going to have to bring out the stretcher. They're going to have to bring out the smelling salts. It was looking pretty bad in there. I like that a lot. I love the way Arnold Allen turned up on Dan Hooker, and just, people are saying, oh, he's just a decision guy. Oh, I'm just a decision guy. Well, now I'm going to blitz Dan Hooker, who is a dangerous long striker with like a 50 strike combination, and see how he responds. I love that. I also love the way Carlos Ulberg handled Negumereanu, hit him with a nasty jab, and then as Negumereanu was trying to close the distance, Carlos Ulberg took a step back and clocked him with a clean left hook. That's just beautiful technique. But the number one, what it is. I know what it is. The fans know what it is. And it was the night that Leon Edwards head kicked Kamaru Usman. And goddamn, I mean, like, that was just an epic knockout. Just the drama of Leon won the first round, loses the next 3 rounds, comes down to this final round, and man, he put a stamp on it. And now, as a result, he's on his victory tour, and he wins my knockout of the year.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. For me, it came down to 2 knockouts. I had to go with Edwards over Usman because of the implication of it. He was down in a 5-round fight for the title. Sweet head kick, out cold. I would give second place to Michael Chandler's knockout over Tony Ferguson back in May. That front kick to the face was just incredible. So those were number 1 and number 2 for me, but have to go with Leon Edwards. Left head kick, put his lights out, implications as high as they could possibly be. So I think that's a clear choice for number 1.
And everybody in the chat, just let us know y'all's thoughts. If you disagree, you agree, something we missed, let us know. Next up, the submission of the year. So I have a feeling that we might have the exact same submission of the year. Like, Andrew and I have not discussed who our winners are for this. We've just discussed the categories. So I don't know who he's going to pick. He doesn't know who I'm going to pick. I just have a feeling we're going to pick the same ones. But
I have a feeling for this one, I'm going to surprise you, though.
Okay, I look forward to that. So the first couple, this isn't number 1 for me, but obviously Islam versus Charles. I mean, how can you not give? I mean, to submit. I know Charles got submitted a lot back in the day, but still, to submit the number 1 submission artist in the history of the sport, and to do it for a belt, and to get a quick tap, no less. I mean, that's got to be top 5. What's one I was underrated that I really liked? I loved the way Pantoja just walked down Alex Perez, gave 0 fucks about anything he brought to the table, and just strangled him. I mean, like, there was no resistance whatsoever. And Alex Perez, I mean, I know he's he's been submitted once or twice, but like, no one's ever walked him down like that. Like, he even had a moment or two against Davison, and against Pantoja, there was no moments. Pantoja was a man on a mission, and he just walked him down and got him out of there. That was one I really liked. Aspinall and Volkov. Man, Aspinall looked amazing that night, man. I mean, like, he's out here hitting blast doubles on Volkov, inside trips, and then sets up a nasty straight armbar, which is something we probably haven't seen since like the Frank Mir or Nogueira days in the heavyweight division. So that was nice. Most recently, Saeed Nurmagomedov, like, goddamn, like, you're getting absolutely worked and you come back and you find that nasty guillotine, the kind of guillotine you don't escape from. I love that. But of course, my number one is the former now, UFC light heavyweight champion Yuri Prohaska submitting Glover. I mean, we're going to talk about our fights of the years, but like, I went on my show, I went on record like, look, I know Yuri can knock him out. I know maybe he can hurt him and win, the better the exchanges, win a decision, but like Yuri ain't about to submit Glover. Like we could write that possibility off. And then he goes out there and submits Glover with a rear naked choke, something that Glover's been tapping people out with for years. So yeah, that's my submission of the year, Yuri Prohaska over Glover.
That's a solid one. It's hard for me to go away from that one. But in terms of pure comeback, I really liked Cody Brundage over Dalcha and Beulah just because he was getting his ass kicked so bad. And it looked like the ref could have stepped in. His body language was terrible. And then he just locked up that guillotine. And so maybe in terms of like pure BJJ skill, that wasn't the best submission. But in terms of just comeback improbability, I love that one. So I'm going with Cody Brundage over Dalcha.
I like that one too because I have like a soft spot for the guillotine. Because like basically what happened to Cody Brundage and what happened to Saeed, like just getting your ass whooped and then pulling it out your back pocket with like whether it's 10 seconds left or whatever the case may be. As a jiu-jitsu guy myself, like I just love that shit because I can relate. Like dudes will be fucking whooping my ass and like you just find that Hail Mary and oftentimes it happens to be a guillotine. So I always have a soft spot for that. So definitely respect that pick. Fight of the year. I alluded to it. And we can talk about the Chimaevs versus Burns, which you and I were actually in attendance for, Andrew. Are you frozen, by the way? Your facial expression is frozen. I believe he's frozen. I ain't the frozen one, right? Y'all let me know in the chat. It's definitely him, right? But oh, you're back. You're back now, Mr. Gombas. It's all good. We'll let him figure out his thing real quick. I'm remove him real quick.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Sorry about that.
You're all good.
So what I was doing is I was trying to pull up the records of all the people I wanted to talk about, and I think I just like overloaded my Internet Explorer, but I'm X'd out now, so we should be all good. Sorry about that.
Damn, my boy's still using Internet Explorer. It's almost 2023.
Or Chrome.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll give you a pass. I use Chrome too. But listen, like I said, we could talk about the Chimaevs versus Burns, which actually you and I were in attendance for. I got to meet you that day in Florida. I had a great time. So that was a great fight. There's been a couple other good ones here and there, but that Yuri versus Glover fight was just something that, because like going into it, it was always about how like, okay, well on the feet, Yuri's got the edge. If it hits the mat one time, Glover's going to submit him. And like it went through literally every worst case scenario for Yuri. I'm talking about a locked in arm triangle choke. And you saw that escape that Yuri had with that arm triangle. That was absolutely nasty. Every time he got full mounted, he was able to expertly use the cage, push off, reverse position. And then we talk about how, well, on the feet, it would be Yuri rocking Glover, which he did rock him at times, but Glover rocked Yuri too. And people like to talk about, oh, you shouldn't have gone for that guillotine, which I disagree. The reason why I disagree is because a minute after he went for that guillotine, Glover was in full mount. So it's like the guillotine didn't cost him shit. He still ended up where he wanted to go into full mount, but Yuri was able to reverse that, and then he tapped him out. So to overcome what he overcame in that fight and to submit the man he submitted with the credentials, I mean, most submissions in light heavyweight history, serious black belt, Yuri Prohaska submission of the year.
Yeah. So,
fight of the year. I meant.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, that was just a fight, to your point, where people were saying going into it, either Yuri's going to knock him out or Glover's going to take him down and submit him. It didn't seem like it was one of those fights that could play out over 5 rounds, which it did. And it was just so back and forth. Glover was getting the best of them. They hurt each other. They took each other down. They ended up on top of each other. They both had submission threats, and then it ended up being a 5th round submission for Yuri, which was probably like 4th or 5th round.
5th.
fifth round submission, which was probably the least likely outcome anyone would have predicted going into that fight, was a fifth round submission for Yuri. So I think it's impossible not to pick that one. Second for me, another one you touched on would be Chimaev versus Burns. We were in the building for that one. The atmosphere was incredible. They just fought at such a crazy pace. Chimaev brings it from the opening bell and answered a ton of questions about his cardio, about his heart, about how he can deal with adversity. So that's number one and number two for me.
So Tristan says Saeed Nurmagomedov over Cody Stamann. Was that this year?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me double
Okay.
check.
So he's got 2 slick guillotines this year.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, that was in January. So that was the card where Gan fought Ngannou.
Okay. When we get to the best bets, we'll go over that. But yeah, Saeed, man, like right when you think you got this guy beat, you get careless leaving that neck in there. I mean, it's just like those long man limbs. Because when you're talking about, he's a former flyweight, right? And now you said what?
That's crazy.
Yeah, he fought Justin Scoggins in his UFC debut, and that was at flyweight, which is crazy. And then he moves up to 35s. He's a fucking big 35, man. Like, this kid is no small 35er. And you saw in this last fight, the frame that Saeed Nurmagomedov has. I was like, God damn, he looked a weight class bigger than Saeed Yakub. And just his ability to snatch that neck from anywhere, no matter how bad the fight's going. But it's not just a traditional guillotine. It's kind of that long man guillotine. Some call it a ninja choke. It was devastating. All right, so fighter of the year. And at first I wasn't sure, but then the light bulb went off, and I only had one option for this category, but I'll let you go first. I'm curious if we got the same guy.
Yeah, my fighter of the year is Alex Pereira, 3-0, became the champ, finished Israel Adesanya in a sick fight. I think did he go from unranked to champ this year? I mean, he definitely wasn't in the top 10 at the beginning of this year, if I remember correctly.
So was his fight against Michailidis this year or last year?
The Michailidis one was in November of last year, and then he fought. Hang on, let me just pull it up.
He went Michailidis to Bruno to Sean to the title.
Yep, and the Bruno, Sean, and Adesanya ones were this year. So 3-0, 2 finishes, one of the most spectacular championship wins that I can remember in recent memory. For me, that's an easy one. He had so many question marks about him going into this, coming from the kickboxing background. It's how will he hold up in the grappling? How will his cardio be in the later rounds? To go from being down 3-1 against Adesanya to finishing him in that 5th round, Pereira is my fighter of the year for sure.
Yeah, and I agree. He's my fighter of the year as well. I mean, it's just insane, like, to transition from a completely different sport, which he was great at that other sport, but still, like, like we always talked about how when he fought Adesanya in kickboxing, well, Adesanya rocked him, but they gave Pereira the 8 count and this and that. And it's just crazy how, like, this guy, when he came back and finished Adesanya twice, like both of those were comeback wins, and like it looked like Adesanya was the better fighter, but it just didn't matter at the end of the day. And not only that, you also saw some other elements of his game. You saw him go in there with a blast double leg on Israel Adesanya, which I did not expect. And he got awarded his brown belt. So yeah, I'm not sitting here saying, he's about to go over to share these dudes, but at least like you're seeing improvements, and he's taking all areas of the game seriously. And then that's what a champion should do. So yeah, I'm pretty damn impressed with our champion, and I think it's a no-brainer for the fighter of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah. He answered a lot of questions. He achieved the biggest thing. He achieved the biggest accomplishment you can make in the UFC, which is becoming the undisputed champ, which very, very few people do. So shout out to him.
And out of curiosity, look, obviously he hasn't defended the belt. He hasn't been in the sport that long, but just like in terms of combat sports athletes, where does he rank? Because you look at a guy like Cejudo, right? Olympic gold medalist, won belts in 2 weight classes in MMA, right? But now you see a guy like Pereira, who he's a glory double champ, right? Like, and now he's a champion, the UFC. So 2-sport world champion, like it's pretty fucking serious, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough to win a belt in either one of those sports, let alone win 2 belts in one sport and then another belt in another. It's seriously impressive that you have to put him very high up in the conversation, in my opinion.
I've been loving the memes about how, like, well, Israel's about to go try something new, and Alex is like, hold my beer, So
it's funny.
Yeah, they've all been pretty good. All right, so let's see what else we got. The Breakout fighter of the year. So there's someone that's like been paying their dues for a while, but 2022 was the year that they really shined and they really took things to the next level. Who do you think it is?
I've got Sergey Pavlovich is mine. Sergey, obviously, we just saw him knock out Tai Tuivasa. Before that, he knocked out Derrick Lewis, and before that, he knocked out Shamil Abdurakhimov. So 3-0 in 2022, 3 first-round knockouts. For me, that one's my breakout fighter of the year. He's a guy who I always thought had power. I always thought he was a decent heavyweight, but this year he went in there and knocked out 3 guys in the first round. I mean, 4 years removed from kind of looking not too great against Alistair Overeem. For me, he was my breakout fighter of the year. He hits like a freaking truck, and he really answered some questions that I had about him because I was like, all right, he's fighting Ty, a guy who has leg kick upside, a guy who has power himself, a guy who's fought better competition. He went out there, he walked right through him. So I mean, some people see that and they say, oh, well, the fight didn't get extended. Pavlovich is not going to be in a lot of fights that get extended. So he's my breakout fighter of the year. But I'm curious to hear what your opinion is because I know there are a few good candidates.
Yeah, for sure, my boy. Sparring with reality, Pavlovich, Garden of Life, fruits and vegetable supplements, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, but what I love about Pavlovich is like now we get to see what he's all about because now you're gonna get the Curtis Blades. Now you're gonna get. I think despite Aspinall's last fight, I think he's legit too. Not to mention, there's been talks for the last 2 years, but there's still been talks about John Jones coming in a heavyweight. I want to see that. You still got the Stipe Miocic's up there, and not to mention the King of Kings, Francis Ngannou. So, I mean, we're really gonna find out what this man Pavlovich is all about. And another guy who we're going to find out what he's all about is my breakout fighter of the year. And that's Bilal Muhammad. This is a guy who is consistently counted out. He's always the underdog, and he doesn't just squeak by these wins. Like, there might be decisions, which he gets criticized for, but look at the guys he's fighting, man. The guys he's fighting are really tough to finish. And a lot of these fights, he's getting in spots to finish. Like against Wonder Boy, it could have been a first-round TKO. Herb Dean wasn't having it that night for whatever reason, but it's not like he's not beating these guys up. And he started this year, I think, outside the top 10 and ended the year in the top 5. So that means that who he's going to fight in 2023, it's going to be the Colby Covingtons, it's going to be the Chimaevs, it's going to be the Usmans, it's going to be the Gilbert Burns. There's not going to be any more like, well, if he fights this guy, then roo. Now it's going to be like, hey, we're going to find out what the deal is, how good this guy can truly be. Because what I've always loved about him, I mean, take away the bias of the fact that he's always the underdog and he always wins. And if you bet Bilal Muhammad every single fight, you will profit long term. But now they'll talk about, okay, he's done good with the guys he's been dealt, but how's he gonna do against these upper echelon guys? Aren't just skilled, they're supreme athletes too, right? Like D1 wrestlers, D2 wrestlers. Usman wasn't even a D1 wrestler. What was he? D2, D3?
D2, yeah, he's a D2 national champ.
Yeah. But wasn't he also like training at the Olympic Training Center or something like that?
Yeah, he was on the senior circuit after he graduated college. I'm pretty sure there's a good match of him versus Deron Wynn. I think.
Okay.
Oh man, it's been a while, but I have a memory. I think Deron Wynn might have pinned him. Let me look that up really quick. Keep going.
Yeah, so I think this guy Bilal has a chance to actually fight for a title in 2023. I know that sounds like a foreign concept to a lot of people, but I think take your bitterness aside that you've been losing on him every single time and start to get on the train, because like oftentimes we talk about the market correction, but bro, like he was plus 115 against Brady. He was plus 200 against Wonder Boy. He was plus 160 against Luque. So I don't think the market's caught on. And now that the level of competition is going to increase even more, I still think he's going to be an underdog. So I'm excited. Like, it's not like he's about to come out here and be minus 200 against Usman. Like that's where you talk about recency bias. That's where you talk about like, come on. I still think he's going to be a disrespected underdog against all these guys. So that's why I'm still riding that train in 2023, and he's my breakout fighter of the year.
Yeah, that's a solid one, and we'll talk about it later with worst bets of the year. But I've been one of those people who has been counting Bilal Muhammad out in the past, and it's funny because the one time where it seemed like it was going to work out for me was the Edwards fight, and it ended up being a no contest. Other than that, it's just been loss after loss.
Oh yeah, man. And I'd love to see that fight ran back at some point too. But next up, the performance of the year. Okay, so this is an interesting one for me. I'm gonna go first. So the performance of the year, and it actually happened quite recently, in my opinion. So like, there was this talk, and I think there's a misconception about this fight between Wonder Boy and Holland, how it's fight of the year and this and that. That was not a fight of the year. That was a beatdown of the year. That was a performance of the year. If you guys know Kevin Holland, you guys know Kevin Holland loves to talk in the middle of his fights. It's entertaining. We like it, this and that. Kevin Holland was not talking after round one. And there's a reason behind that. The reason being is that Wonder Boy Thompson took the fight out of Kevin Holland, which, they made their gentleman's agreement. They got down to the ground once. Kevin Holland let him back up. You can criticize him all you want for it. But the bottom line is he got the stand up fight he thought he wanted. And man, after that, like, goddamn, like that was because, like, going into the fight, we're thinking Wonder Boy's 40. Wonder Boy, coming off two fights that weren't even competitive. Like, he's just not the same guy anymore. Plus, with his style, fight you with his hands down. These guys coming up, we know that Kevin Holland can crack, man. So I was kind of worried for him. Not enough to bet Holland, thank God. But god damn, the techniques. And then also, it was like the kind of performance like back in the day when Machida fought Rashad and dethroned him for the belt. Like, literally the next day on Monday, like, karate schools filled up because, like, it was like, holy shit, like, karate really works. After what Wonder Boy just did to Holland, I guarantee you the sign up rates for karate schools just went up. And I talked to one of my buddies, Joey Imperator. He's like a really well respected karate black belt, and he was just like freaking out over that performance. Like, he's like talking about, like, man, you don't see guys throw side kicks anymore. It's a technique that you can't really even counter, and like, and then it opens up all parts of the body. And man, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, performance of the year for me. My boy sparring with Reality said Islam over Charles, and I mean, I agree. He knocked him down. He submitted him. He mopped the fucking floor with him. So I don't disagree with you. Um, but man, some of those techniques I saw it was like almost like too easy for Islam. That's why I'd more rather give him like maybe like submission of the year. But I do feel where you're coming from. It was one of the best performances, but there was just something about the way Wonder Boy handled Holland that takes the cake for me.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually over Charles is what I was gonna say, but then I kind of got to the same point as you. I was like, he almost made it look too easy. It was almost too quick. For me, I'm going with Volkanovski over Korean Zombie. I know Volk was a big favorite in that fight, but Zombie is still one of those guys who's just an absolute legend. He's been around forever. You can never really see guys walk right through him. And Volkanovski just absolutely torched him over 5 rounds. He beat him everywhere. It looked like they were playing a different sport out there, for lack of a better term. So I'm going with Volkanovski over Jung. It was so complete. He won every minute of the round. He won every minute of every round. He finished the fight. It was just a brutal beatdown of someone who I have a lot of respect for. So I think Volkanovski over Jung gets it for me.
Yeah, and what's such a good point about that is that, like, going into the fight, Volk was like minus 800, minus 900. And to me, I'm thinking like, look, I think Volk's going to win, but you give me, some odds like this on Jung and I might be tempted cuz, Korean Zombie, he's got a knack for just creating chaos and just making history in there. I mean, like, win or lose, Back in the day, he submitted Dustin Poirier in a main event. You know what I'm saying? Combine that with the fact that he's got the fastest knockout in featherweight history. Like, guy fought for a title. He gave Aldo his best fight at the time until he blew his shoulder out and came back from the military leave and just went on this ridiculous run. Even the fight he lost against Yair was like the fight of the year, man. So yeah. So like, Zombies always had a way of creating magic in fights. So when you see like a plus 500, plus 600 against, anyone, I know Volk's Volk, but still, it's like, yo, like, maybe I might be tempted to take the shot. Like, dude, you could have laid minus 800 straight. You could have laid minus 900 straight on Volk, and there was value there. So I feel you.
Yeah, I mean that performance just blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, he really is levels above everyone else in his division.
He is, man, and I'm very curious to see what happens now with what's coming up. With him fighting Islam, and then dropping back. It's interesting when guys go up and then they come back, and there's going to be an interim title. So I'm very interested to see what happens with that. So next up, we got the rookie of the year. So that means they made their debut in 2022. Obviously, I got two. I got a male and a female. So my male rookie of the year for 2022 is a man named Jailton Almeida. This guy at 205 pounds. I mean, like, his jiu-jitsu is absolutely nasty. He submitted a Russian on Contender series. He's been just running through everybody in the UFC right now. They even offered him Jamal Hill for this upcoming card in Brazil. But Jamal was like, I'd rather fight Glover for the title instead, so I don't blame him there. But just imagine a year from now, I could see Jailton, just being right up there, not even just light heavyweight, but maybe even heavyweight. Like, the skill set, the size, the confidence. I think he's the rookie of the year, and I think he's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, that's my rookie of the year too. For me, that was like
No way.
Yeah, for me that was like the easiest one to make. He's 3-0. He's finishing everyone. It's not just that he's finishing everyone. It's just he's absolutely dominating them. He goes out there, gets on top, chokes them. It looks like he doesn't even it looks like he doesn't even break a sweat out there. I think he's already probably right up there with the top tier of that division. I think he could have success at 205 or at heavyweight. And yeah, coming from Contender series and just absolutely annihilating everyone he's fought, for me, that's easy rookie of the year.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'll just tell you who my other candidates were, just so you know who Jailton's competition was. So Mohamed Mokaev. I mean, the guy came in and made a storm. I mean, like, listen, Cody Durden, maybe he'll win some, maybe he'll lose some, but like, no one's ever handled Cody Durden like that. Like, no one, like, not a single guy. And then his next two fights, I mean, it's funny how, like, we criticize them because they weren't 30-second flying knee knockouts, but like, the next fight, he sets a fucking takedown record and most takedowns in flyweight history. Next fight, like, I know Malcolm Gordon might be this, might be that, but he still dominated him and submitted a black belt at the end of the day. Like, okay, he didn't knock him out in 30 seconds, but like, that's the kind of standard we hold this kid in. Like, so that just goes to show, like, you can't, discredit him or diminish his performance just because he whooped a guy's ass for 3 rounds instead of, submitting him in 30 seconds. So he was one of my candidates. Obviously, I gave it to Jailton. And then for the women, Luke brought up a really good one. Yasmin Yaragui. I definitely think she's a strong candidate, but I got to give it to Natalia Silva, man. I think that Natalia Silva just came into the UFC and is just showing something exciting. Like, it's giving us something. Like, when's the last time you saw a chick throw a spinning back kick knockout? Like, I haven't seen a spinning back kick knockout. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure there has been one since then. But you remember when Henan Barrow spinning back kicked Eddie Wineland on the John Jones versus Gustafsson card, the first one? Like, the
That's
shit
really
that
going back.
Natalia did to her last opponent, like, goddamn. And then prior to that, sorry, remind me, what was her debut again?
Hang on, let me look it up. I could picture the girl, but I can't think of her name.
Like, oh yeah, Jasmine. Oh yeah,
Vicious, yeah.
so she's in there with a Canadian silver medalist, I believe.
I don't know what her credential is, but she was coming off a win against someone who had spent time in the UFC before that, so it wasn't like she was going out there and beating a complete jobber.
Yeah, so Jasmine Jasdavicius, all my Canadian listeners, let me know if I'm fucking this up, but I'm pretty goddamn sure Jasdavicius was like a Canadian silver medalist, bro. And Natalia's going out there, not just stuffing all the takedowns, Andrew, landing takedowns of her own and not being gun shy to let her strikes go because of the threat of the takedown. She was that confident in her takedown defense. She let her strikes go, and then she attempted takedowns of her own and secured them. So that, for a debut, I was like, okay. And she was like half the size. I paid attention there. She was half the size of her next opponent, and spinning back kicks her to the face and into the fifth dimension. So, yeah, Natalia Silva is my female rookie of the year.
Yeah, that's solid. I didn't come prepared with a female rookie of the year, but I think that one's pretty hard to argue with. Also, Yasmin Jargui up there too for rookie of the year. Both of them have a lot of talent, and I see them doing big things in the future.
Absolutely. Are they same weight class by chance off the top of your head?
No, I think Yasmin is 115, and I think
Okay, cool,
Natalia is
cool.
125. Let me double check that though.
Because like, okay, part of me loves, you know, the matchups of like the top prospects, like Demir versus Armin last week, right? Even though yeah, the fight might not have been the best, but like I love those kind of matchups, like Arnold Allen versus Sodiq Yusuf, like
Yeah,
where you know just two big time prospects. Let's see who the better guy is, because a lot of people are like, no, let's protect these guys. Let's let them take out the old guard, which I love taking out the old guard too. Don't get me wrong, like you're gonna be seeing that a lot with, you're gonna be seeing guys like Dan Hooker, Tony Ferguson, RDA get kind of ushered out the lightweight rankings. So you're going to see these guys like Armin Sarukian, Demir, Jalen Turner. All these guys are going to kind of take their place, and you're going to see that in all these other weight classes as well. So yeah, I love to kind of see the evolution of the sport, but a lot of people, they don't like putting the two best prospects in there together. Kind of like a couple weeks ago with Bryce and Taporia, whereas I'm thinking like, dude, I want to know who's fucking better. Like these guys are so good. You're talking about both guys being future champions. Like I want to know who the better man is. Fuck protecting them. This is the UFC. Like let's find out who's better. And back to performance of the year. I still give it to Wonder Boy, but goddamn was Taporia close. I mean, like, because I thought, like, okay, some sprawl and brawl, bust him up a little bit, but when every single shot you land has that kind of impact, you're dropping him all over the place, you're wobbling him, and then hey, let's add insult to injury and let's go submit this guy real quick, So I was blown away by Taporia, and I've already been impressed with him, but that took it to a new level because I always thought, like, okay, yeah, top 10, maybe top 5, but now I'm like, okay, yeah, top 5. Like, this guy might actually fight for a belt. So he actually really, really impressed me.
yeah, that was a great performance. There's like, it's one of those things too when you talk about matching up to prospects, if you want to call them that, or people who are going to be taking the step up. A loss in the UFC doesn't mean the end all be all. Like Sarukian lost, and there's no one out there that I see that's saying that he can't compete for a title still someday. It's not like boxing where you have one loss and that's it, that's the end for you. So I don't mind them matching prospects up at all. Bryce Mitchell will be back if he wants to be. I mean, there's a ton of guys at 145 he could beat right now, and it's the same thing goes for when Sarukian and Gamrot fight, or when Demir fights Kudaladzej, or Demir fights Sarukian.
Right.
There's more to do for them, even with the loss.
Exactly. And certain guys' stocks will raise after losses. Like Guram, for example, when he fought Demir, like that was just such a good fight that on paper there's a loser, but in my
Yeah.
eyes, not a loser. In my eyes, I saw a very high level fight with two guys that are going to emerge in the top 15. And again, back to the point, kind of weed out the old guard, the people that they earned their spot back in the day, but the circle of life, you know how this shit goes. So yeah. Now, next up, let's see. So we did performance, we did rookie. Now we're gonna get to one of my favorite ones. We're gonna get to the J. Perrin Jobber of the Year award. So, I thought I knew what a jobber was, and then I heard Jay Perrin run his mouth, and I was like, oh my god! But I can't. Jay Perrin's such a jobber. I can't even give him an award on my own show. So the 2022 Half the Battle Jay Perrin Jobber of the Year award goes to Darrick Minner. I mean, when you talk about being a jobber, like even prior to this whole fiasco, Darrick Minner was already a jobber. Darrick Minner was already that guy that, I know his record's a little bit better than 500, but it's just kind of like if he can't get you out of there in the first round, it's content going home. Guy that's been a journeyman for a very, very long time. But he wanted that crown this year. He wanted the 2022 Jay Perrin Jobber of the Year award, and boy did he get it, man. Because I mean, when you talk about the bullshit that happened, man, like it's one thing, you go through, you run a guy through the series, he gets out, you gas out, you lose the fight, whatever. But like to go into a fight 2 hours before the fight, the line moves $2 in the direction of your opponent. The inside the distance prop gets steamed, the under gets steamed, the KO1 gets steamed, and then you just go down in the first exchange. Like, yeah, Darrick Minner, Jay Perrin, Jobber of the Year, no questions asked from my standpoint.
Yeah, I'm with you for sure. That's who I have written down also. You just can't do that and expect to get away with it. And it's not something I thought we'd see in 2022. I really thought the days of a potential fixed fight were long behind us in the UFC. I could see it potentially in a smaller organization or maybe even an organization in a different country. But when I saw that that line start to move, it's typical. You see fight day line movement. People are making big bets. There's sharp money coming in. But when you see a line move $2, then you see someone go out there and throw 2 kicks to the body with a bad knee and go down. It raises eyebrows. And in today's day and age with technology and there being records of texts, phone calls, emails, all that
Oh
stuff,
man.
you just can't expect to get away with it. And it's funny, I actually went back and rewatched it recently because the biggest thing for me was like, all right, if they fixed a fight, it's different than if you fought injured, not like still trying to win the fight. And so I'm like, all right, I want to make the judgment for myself. Do I think he was in on it? I went back and watched the fight. He didn't throw a single head strike. He didn't even want to knock him out by accident. He went and threw two. He threw a couple leg kicks. He threw a couple body kicks. He went down. So whatever happens to that situation, I wish them all the best. But he, in my book and in your book, wins the Jobber of the Year.
Yeah, man. No questions asked. And it was also like the first time in a long time where I truly felt disgusted. And this is before all the speculation started. Like, because, we got some similar qualities. Like, I'm sure you're always looking at the lines, looking at the movement, doing this and that. So I'm sure before, like, fuck what everyone was saying on Twitter. I'm sure that 2 hours before the fight started, you're casually going on whatever book you're betting on at the time, and then you see a fucking $2 line move. You're like, yo, okay, right then and there, red flag for a potential something. But and plus with his coach's involvement in the betting game, him being a little too loud, this and that, right? But then the fight starts, and the guy goes down in the first exchange, and like I felt dirty. Like I didn't even have any money on it. I just felt dirty watching it because like that was just really bad for the sport. Like that was just like one of those things where I literally walked out like feeling like disgusted, like, wow, I just watched a fixed fight. And the reason why that's a big deal coming from me is because I hear motherfuckers talking about, oh, that UFC's rigged and this fight's fixed. And then I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like people are trying to call, I can't think of an example right now, but people are trying to call all kinds of fights fixed. And it's like,
Dude,
dude,
people were trying to call. I saw people on Twitter calling the freaking Yuri Glover fight fixed.
exactly. Like there was nothing fixed. That was a war. That was a battle of attrition. That came down to the waning seconds of the final round. Like, and these guys were going back and forth, giving life, like blood, sweat, and tears. Whereas the Minner fight, like, I literally was like, oh my God, like this, like, I was like sad. I was like, wow, like this really happened in our sport. And this is before I saw everybody's speculation. I know what the fuck I was watching, bro. Like, I did not watch a guy go in there and try to win a fight. I watched a guy try to collect money on his opponent's win. I'm curious how they handled it. They probably had their people. I don't know. The investigation will come out, but like you were talking about earlier, nowadays those paper trails with the text messages, like, dude, like I hope that he threw away his phone, ran over it 3 times with the car. But even then, I'm sure there's a database that like has every single text you've made, even if it's been deleted. So yeah, you can run, but you can't hide. Or like you seen Ocean's 11? It's with George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and I think maybe Matt Damon. But anyways, they're like basically George Clooney, he gathers a group of 11 dudes and they're gonna rob the biggest Vegas casino and do this big heist. And the owner of the casino finds out and he gets on the phone and he's like, my only advice is run and hide, asshole. Run and hide. So I think let's see what Minner does. So that's our Jay Perrin Jobber of the Year. But now my Darrick Minner Stunt of the Year award. So our first ever 2022 Half the Battle Darrick Minner Stunt of the Year award goes to his coach James Krause, because I actually really respected James Krause like for a long time. I mean, like even prior to all the betting shit, like I mean, the guy was a solid fighter. He'd take fights on like a day short notice, and he's a guy that's paid his dues because like I know that towards the end of his UFC run, he actually had like a lot of success. But if you go back to the WEC days, you see the ass whooping that Cowboy Cerrone gave James Krause, or you even see on the Ultimate Fighter what Justin Lawrence did to James Krause. Like, James Krause was not looked at as, you know, someone who is going to make it far in the sport. He was looked at someone that was going to wash out. And the fact that he turned things around and then he became this analytical mind. Like, you listen to his breakdowns, like, the guy's well spoken. He's a good coach. He knows what he's talking about. And all his fighters swore by him. But then he got into the betting game, and there's nothing wrong with getting into the betting game. I'm not going to hate on someone for giving their picks, giving their analysis, doing their thing, even fucking having your Discord channel, your YouTube channel. Like, you ain't affecting me by doing that. Go do your thing, knock yourself out. It's just that, you know, this because you've been in the game a very long time, just like I have. People have delusions of grandeur when they get into this betting game. You know, you might hit, you know, you go out there your first couple times, you hit a 14 parlay. Now you think you're God's gift to betting. Now you think that you're in a spot where you can give betting advice, but you don't even understand, you know, how the numbers work. You don't understand. Like, to you, it's just picking winners. So yeah, I'm gonna go pick Bo Nickel at minus 1800, lay 18 units to win one. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how these guys start off, because it's all about picking winners. They don't understand about the value and this and that. You know, like, no, I'm not gonna go bet Jamie Pickett, but like, still, I'm not laying no minus 1800 on Bo Nickel. So basically, the point I was trying to make was, you know, he had a little bit of early success, which you can call it, what is it, like beginner's luck or whatever the fuck they like to call it. But everything evens itself out. And, you know, you're going to get found out if you're for real or for not. And I think that he kind of got a little bit carried away. He got a little bit cocky. Then he started getting involved with people who were also in the game. And they used the fact that, you know, James Krause has the notoriety of being the former UFC fighter, the former coach. And now we mix him in with, you know, a quote unquote handicapper. And they thought they were really going to take over this game. And I didn't have an issue with Krause. Again, for the YouTube channel, have your Discord, do your thing, bro. I don't give a fuck. It's just the first red flag was the account takeover part. And I'll tell you why. You know, there's legit ways to do account takeovers now, not legally, but just in terms of my morals and my ethics, there's ways to do it that's not wrong. And the way to do that, you know, hypothetically speaking, would be, let's say that you have an entrepreneur friend who doesn't know shit about betting, but like, y'all are close, you guys know each other, right? And he says, like, listen, I'm gonna deposit hypothetically 10K into this betting account. You win me back my 10K, and then everything we profit from there on out, we split 50-50. Like, that's a legit way to do an account takeover. Not legally, guys. Don't do this. It's not legally, but just in terms of my morals, you know, weed's illegal, prostitution's illegal, gambling's illegal, but those things, there's nothing wrong with those things in my book. Like, I'm not saying go do them. I'm just saying I don't think you should be thrown in jail if you do them, right? So, you know, but the thing with the account takeovers, the big difference with what Krause was doing was he's offering it to hundreds of people that he doesn't know. He's offering it to like Joe Schmo on Twitter. He doesn't know this person. And then there was all this thing about how, well, if you don't have a winning week, you're still going to owe us money. You know, it's kind of like in Goodfellas when it's like, oh, your mom's in the hospital. Fuck you, pay me. Right. So it was like one of those kind of things. So that's where I was first like, yo, because people had red flags about him prior to that. But I was kind of like, you know, when he went on Helwani, I was just like, dude, don't be so loud and talk about how you make more doing this. Like, kind of keep it on the DL. But I still wasn't like, okay, arrest this man. But when you go out there and blatantly fix a fight, that's when, you know, you cross the line. And that's when you receive the 2022 Darrick Minner Stunt of the Year award. So yeah, it goes to James Krause for me.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that one. I did pick a different one, though. I went with Askar Mazarov, who fought who fought Alonzo Menifield early
That's
in
a
the
good
year.
one. That's a good one.
It came out before the fight that his record was fake. I think he started off like he started off 9-4. By the time they got in the cage, he was like 5-4. They said that he had fights on his record, never happened, and just more and more kept coming out about it. He gets in the fight with Alonzo Menifield, gets steamrolled, and I think he even went and had another fight after that, if I remember correctly. I think he had another fight after that in another organization and lost. Let me just clarify that really quick.
Dude, real quick. It's not just the 5-4. Like, this guy started off, this record was like 22-8. Then it went down to like, 16-9, and he had like a bunch of different names. Like his name was like, Askarov Mozharov. Then it was Asker Mozharov. Then it was John Smith. You know what I'm saying? Like this guy like was changing names every like 6 months, trying to change his record as well.
Yeah, so it looks like he actually retired after that Menifield fight, which probably isn't the worst idea. But yeah, that whole thing was a disaster.
Well, Asker Mozharov retired, but his new alias it hasn't retired yet.
Yeah, you're gonna see a guy that looks strikingly similar to him with a mustache with a 3-0 record coming on Contender Series next
You remember
year.
when Chael Sonnen went to Brazil and he wore like the fake glasses with the nose and the mustache? Like,
yeah, like the Mr. Potato Head.
yeah, like Mozharov's gonna come out with some shit like that.
Yeah, that was crazy. For me, he wins the stunt of the year.
Yeah, and there's some other stunts of the year that we talked about privately, but I think I think
there's
these are some.
MMA Twitter stunts of the year too. But
there's been more than one, but anyways, all right, contenders to look out for in 2023. So we're doing the contenders to look out for and the prospects to look out for, and the difference is obviously but for the fans, contenders are ranked, right? Like, so these are guys that you think are going to move up the rankings, and the prospects are guys that are, I think most of these guys are outside the rankings or they're at the very tip, like right in the top 15, and you think they're going to move up too. So I'm going to start off with my contenders to look out for in 2023. So one that I've been high on since day one is Arnold Allen. I think that he's very underrated. He's fucking like 9 or 10-0 in the UFC, which is crazy, man. And he's always coming out here and like performing at good prices, and like you see different areas of his game. He's got the reputation of kind of just being a low volume point fighter, but I've seen him go out there and land over 100 significant strikes in a 3-round fight. He's got the reputation of being a low volume point fighter, goes out there and just bum rushes Dan Hooker and gets him out of there early. Has a reputation for being a low volume point striker, submits Mads Burnell, who at the time, I don't know if you remember, but people were crying when Mads Burnell got released from the UFC. People are saying that was the worst decision that Sean and Mick had ever made, like in all their years. Like it was some catastrophe. But more importantly, Mads Burnell was known for his submission game, and you got Arnold out here going out here submitting him. I think Sodiq Yusuff is a great prospect. Arnold Allen was out there dropping him in the first 2 rounds. I was like, God damn, and landing takedowns too. So Arnold Allen's on my list. Chito Vera's on my list, man. I mean, I just love this guy's story. Like the fact that like, if you watch Chito Vera's UFC debut and you watch his most recent fight, it's like not even the same guy. Like he's truly like the definition of just hard work paying off. Like he's someone who, there is no off season with this guy. I hear how he's like running 13 miles and he's just got this insane killer instinct. And normally I don't like the low volume guys. And I say low volume, he's landed over 100 significant strikes in multiple fights. But I'm just saying, for the most part, the way I like to describe Chito Vera's style is chill, 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 kill, kill, kill. Like that's just how he fights, man. Like he'll drop like the first couple rounds and then just destroy a guy. Normally I don't like banking on that, but with him, it's super fucking reliable. And there's just something about him and his work ethic that sometimes the stars align for guys, like they did with Bisping when he won the belt, and like they did with Glover when he won the belt. And I could totally see Chito Vera overcoming the odds and one day being a champion. So there's him. Sodiq, you guys know how I feel about Sodiq. Yan Xiaonan, I think she's getting pretty close. I've always been high. I've bet on Yan Xiaonan literally every single UFC fight she's had. I think she's right up there. I think Topuria made an incredible case for himself this last fight. He was already making cases for himself, but he was making cases for himself to be a top 10 guy. This last fight showed, hey, like, no, I'm a top 5 guy and potential a future title challenger. Bilal, you guys already know how I feel about that. Blanchfield's looked fucking amazing, and with the holes that Valentina has in her game, hey, don't be surprised if Blanchfield wins a belt next year. Jamal Hill, you guys know how I feel about Jamal Hill. When you see a guy that's 6'4" with the 80-inch reach, he's got the power of like an Ngannou, but he's got the volume of a little guy. Like that's someone I take note of. Jalen Turner, from being a guy who I don't know if you saw some of his past fights. Like, he used to get knocked the fuck out brutally in fights to now turn it around, uses his length just expertly, and is an absolute matchup problem in the lightweight division. And then last but not least, Rafael Fiziev, man. I think he's one of the best strikers in all the sport. His takedown defense has been improving leaps and bounds. He's got a different kind of fast twitch explosiveness to his game. I think he's a force to be reckoned with. So those are my top contenders to look out for in 2023.
Yeah, those are all solid. I have one for male, one for female. 2023 contender to look out for on the male side is going to be Umar Nurmagomedov. They have him ranked at number 11 right now. I don't think there's 10 guys in that division that can beat him. I don't think he'd be the underdog to the majority of them. I think he's shown a lot and that he is a complete game. He's going to be on that first card of the year next year, taking on Raoni Barcelos. I think he likely makes a statement there because that would be a really good win. Barcelos is a guy that I respect. A lot of people in the space respect. So I think Umar is a very the sky's the limit for him. And then on the female side, you hit it on the head. Erin Blanchfield, I think she's going to take a big step up here fighting Tyler Santos. And I think it's going to bode well for her. I think she matches well against Valentina. And yeah, sky's the limit again. Potential champ for both of them. So I'm going Umar and I'm going Blanchfield as my contenders to look out for in 2023.
Because, dude, it's not often you're gonna get like a plus 250, plus 350 on Raoni Barcelos. So that kind of speaks to like where you rank a guy like Umar. Because Barcelos is no slouch, man.
Not one bit.
Yeah. So you think it's gonna actually be like a domination, or you think he just kind of edges him?
I think he's gonna look. I think he's gonna be a sizable favorite. I think he's gonna look a sizable favorite.
Yeah, and to do that against a guy like Barcelos, that'd be something to see. So we talked about our contenders. Now let's talk about our prospects. So most of these are unranked, just people I think are going to make an impact in 2023. I already talked about Natalia Silva. She won my Rookie of the Year. I think she's a force to be reckoned with. Nasty striking, good takedown defense, good jiu-jitsu, and is not afraid to be taken down. So therefore, she lets her just unorthodox strikes go. I mean, you see her throwing side kicks to the face, just like my girl Yan Zhao, and spinning kicks. So I love everything about Natalia Silva. I love her attitude. Michael Morales. I think this guy is just like a ridiculous like specimen of an athlete. And he's also got that Ecuadorian heart, like a guy like Chito Vera. So he's got like, imagine Chito Vera, but like a dude that could go to the Olympic Training Center with Chito Vera's like will to win and heart and finishing ability. Michael Morales, someone to look out for. Michel Pereira. I think that you give Michel Pereira the right matchups. I think that he could climb his way up a little bit, man. Wonder Boy said he wanted that fight. I'm very intrigued by the prospects of a Michel Pereira versus Wonder Boy fight. I mean, Michel Pereira is just very unique. He does things that other guys don't do. So he's someone to keep an eye out for. Also, Jack Della Maddalena, the level of competition is going to increase as he keeps winning, and dude's got clean hands. I mean, and he's got a chin, and he's got submission defense and heart. Like you saw that locked in arm triangle choke he escaped. You see some of these spots he gets in. He never panics. He's got an insane chin, and then his hands are some of the best in the division. RoboCop, he's been doing his thing. I think you got to look out for him. Just a tough banger, and that comeback against Chitty was nasty. Ian Gary has been a money machine for me this year. I fucking love this kid, Ian Gary. And the thing I like so much about him, I mean, obviously I love his style, the volume, the smarts, this and that, but I love that people are down on him. But because he's Irish, therefore he must be a McGregor wannabe. Therefore he must be overhyped. Therefore he must be overrated. Whereas I'm like, do you recognize the skills you're seeing when this guy fights? I love everything about this kid, Ian Gary, and I've cashed on him in all his fights in 2022. And I look forward to keep doing that in 2023. Let's give him like Tim Means or some shit next fight, and I'll be on that as well. So Ian Gary, definitely. Adrian Yanez, I mean, come on. Some of the fastest hands in the bantamweight division. I was surprised they gave Chris Gutierrez the Frankie fight. I thought they could have maybe given it to Adrian Yanez. I think he's right up there. Carlos Olberg, just give this kid a little bit more time. He's a talent to be reckoned with. Jailton Almeida, we talked about him. And Yasmin Yaragui, we talked about her. So those are my prospects to look out for in 2023.
Yeah, that's a great list. I'm gonna take the easy layup here and say Bo Nickel, prospect to look out for in 2023. Obviously, a couple dominant wins on the Contender Series, super extensive wrestling background. He's gonna fight Jamie Pickett early next year. He's gonna be a massive favorite. It's gonna be really fun to watch how fast they try to move him along, see if anyone can even make him struggle. Because I personally don't anticipate Jamie Pickett is gonna make him struggle much. I think he's gonna take Pickett down. I think he's gonna finish him. But I would love to see him against some of that higher level of competition that maybe he can't just walk right through. Like, he's obviously going to get a lot of takedowns in the UFC, but I want to see what he's got on the feet. I want to see what he's got as a fight gets played out in the later second, early third rounds, and possibly even I don't know if it'll happen next year, but possibly the year after, going into main events and co-main events and seeing what he could really do. Because obviously, it's someone who I've been around a long time in the wrestling community, and it's crazy because he's a finisher in wrestling, and that doesn't really exist in college wrestling. Like, the skill gap between you and your opponent has to be pretty high for you to pin them. And he's like pinned people in the NCAA finals, which is very, very rare. So I think he's going to be a finisher in the UFC too. That's my prospect to look out for in 2023.
Oh yeah. I mean, phenomenal talent. So let's see. Tristan said Mirzakhanov could get ranked. I actually think he might already be ranked. But either way, if he's not, definitely someone to look out for. But I think there's a chance he might be like 13, 14, 15 already. So definitely agree with you. So let's see. Now, this is one I had trouble with, the number one pound for pound fighter on the roster, because normally I just traditionally always give it to John Jones, but my boy hasn't fought in 2 years, so I think it's kind of tough to give him that. And then, oh yeah, real quick, Will Martin said Tatsura Taira, one to look out for next year. I agree with that as well. Kid's nasty with his back takes. And you saw the guy who just beat CJ Vergara is fighting our favorite 1 minute, killer, Daniel De Silva. So I look forward to that. But okay, the number one pound for pound fighter on the roster. This is a tough one for me because it's like I always give it to John Jones. He hasn't fought in 2 years. I can't give it to him this year. I want to give it to Volk because I think he currently is the number one pound for pound. But like, if Islam embarrasses him, then that's gonna have to be removed. But at the same time, he goes out there and beats Islam, becomes a 2 division champ. Then there's no debate who the number one pound for pound is. But I think Islam, despite the resume maybe not being there with like a Usman yet, just skill wise and dominance wise, he might be the number one pound for pound. So this is one I'm kind of sitting on the fence, but I think the winner of Volk and Islam is going to give me my winner here.
Yeah, my 2022 number one pound for pound fighter is Islam. And it's funny because Volk would be my number two, and it's in that order. It's one of those things where, like, I feel like Islam is going to beat Volk personally, but obviously they're in different weight classes. But I think if Volk even like gives him a run for his money, you could make a case for it because, like I said, he is the one coming up in weight. I just think Islam's game is so flawless. He's defensively on the feet, he's fantastic. His wrestling, he's strong. His top control, just everything about his game is just it's really, really good. I actually think he's one of the best fighters of all time, probably skill for skill. I'd probably put him somewhere in the top 5 or 10 if you're just looking at pure skill, not necessarily like accomplishments or body of work. But when I watch him fight, I see so few flaws, and I think he's gonna dominate for a long time if he sticks around for that long. And I think he's the number one pound for pound right now. But definitely Volkanovski in that conversation. I think even though he got knocked out by Edwards in that 5th round, I think Usman still belongs somewhere in that top 5. He's a freak of nature. He's still in it for me skill wise. So yeah, that'd probably be my 1, 2, and 3 is Islam, Volk, then Usman.
Will said also expecting a big year for the Basharat brothers. Yeah, I like those kids. They're kind of got that tall, skinny frame for their weight class. They're very intelligent. I like how they fight. So definitely keep an eye out for them. All right. So gym of the year and coach of the year. And mine are the same. My gym of the year is Fortis MMA. I think that, maybe last year they kind of fell back a little bit, but this year they're right back in there. Ryan Span's about to be in a main event against Krylov, just knocked out Dominic Reyes. Jeff Neal with the performance of his career against Vicente Luque. Kennedy and Zechiku's main eventing cards now. I think that they got a good thing going on there. So I think Fortis MMA is my gym of the year. And then my coach of the year, I mean, it's the general. It's the captain, Saif Saud, man. I mean, like, when you want to hear a true motivational speech, and I'm not talking about James Krause trying to get his inside the distance inside the distance bet to cash, between rounds. I'm not talking about that, but like in all seriousness, I mean, I can like set Coach Say Saud as my alarm clock, and I'll jump right up and fucking get ready to go, man. So that guy is a motivator, and they've had him on some UFC shows breaking down film, and the guy's just as sharp as anybody. So, and he's just no nonsense, no bullshit. I just respect the fuck out of him. So, Coach Safe Saud, Coach of the Year, Fortis, Gym of the Year.
Yep, concur here. I have their roster pulled up, and if you take a look at some of these guys, they're 2022. Damon Jackson 3-0. You got Ryan
Damon
Spann,
Jackson, good one.
Ryan Spann 2-0 in 2022. Jeff Neal 1-0 in 2022. Alonzo Menafield 2-0 in 2022. Kennedy Nzechukwu 2-1 in 2022. Should be 3-0, but that had that unfortunate decision against Nikolai Negumereanu early on. But yeah, he's turning these guys into better fighters, which I think it's not easy, but if you put the best talent in the world at a gym, it's easier to make them look good. But he's improving fighters, and it's showing in their performance. Like you mentioned, guys like Ryan Spann, who are clearly getting better. Guys like Damon Jackson, who's on his second stint in the UFC, who's won 4 fights in a row and who's won 6 out of his last 7 with his only loss to Mina Topuria. It's really impressive what he's doing over there. So Saif Saud, Coach of the Year, Fortis MMA Gym of the Year.
Sparring with Reality said Mark Montoya just came out of successful surgery today. We're really happy to hear that. It was a great presence in the sport. So, obviously wish him the best, and I'm glad to hear that. So, all right. Our best bets of 2022 and our worst bets of 2022. What do the fans want to hear first? Y'all want to hear our best bets or our worst bets? Because I listed quite a few for both. What do you think? Because I mean, usually when people say, do you want the good news or the bad news first? They usually say they want the bad news first.
That's what I say, yeah.
So how about we give them the worst bets first? So my worst bets of 2022. So first event of the year. Okay, so last year, 2021, I had my worst year ever. And you know how there's always like the month break between like, the last event of December, first event of January. You got the time to kind of like, make your game plan and kind of figure out like, okay, what's going to be different this year and this and that. Okay. So coming out the gates, I come out firing out the gates in 2022. And my first bet, I make a big bet. I put 5 units on Giga Chikadze to beat Calvin Kattar, first event of the year. So I lost on that. And that same night, I also lost on Burrito to beat Algio. But anyway, so first event of the year, I lose 7.5 units, right? And that's like the first event of 2022. Coming off my worst year, I was like, that's not exactly how I intended to start the year. So yeah, Giga over Kattar. I mean, my reasoning going into it, not to make excuses, I just thought, you're giving me a boxer with a negative strike differential against one of the best kickboxers to ever be in the sport. Like, yeah, and he's coming off the Max Holloway loss. Yeah, give me Giga here. And then Calvin Kattar beat the living shit out of him in a way where I was like, oh my God, dude, like really? So yeah, I started the year off minus 7.5 units. And Giga was one of my worst bets. Let's just go back and forth on this.
Yeah, that's it's funny because I think some of your best bets are going to be some of my worst, and then vice versa. So like I have Kattar as one of my best ones of the year.
Yeah,
but one of the worst ones that I believe you were on the other, I actually know you were on the other side of, was Luque versus Bilal. Laid chalk on Luque, and Bilal looked like a sizable favorite. I figured he'd be able to keep it up on the feet, dominate him in the striking. He was not able to keep it on the feet. Bilal pretty much took him down at will for 5 rounds. And yeah, that was a pretty rough one for me.
So next up, Peter Yan over Sterling. Now listen. So I actually thought Peter Yan won the fight, but that's irrelevant. You know why that's irrelevant? Because I laid like minus 350 on it. So going into it, I thought we were just going to add insult to injury of how the first fight went. I thought he was just going to come out here, take out the trash, and just be done with this chapter and just move on to bigger, better things. And I have to admit, as someone who's been in the game as long as I have, I made a huge mistake of, somewhat letting the hype get to me. Not that I was like watching the countdowns and fucking fanning out or anything, but still, I was just so set in my mind that, oh, he's just gonna run through Aljamain. Like Aljamain's broken before the fight's even started, like this and that. And it was like, dude, even though Peter Yan, in my eyes, won the first fight, I mean, there were still some rounds that Aljamain won, so it's not like it was like a big blowout. It just seemed like it was headed towards a finish at the end for Peter Yan. So I was overconfident on Peter Yan, and as a result, I paid. So my next worst bet of the year was Peter Yan minus 350. Because again, had he gone out there and just starched Aljo or just destroyed him, then okay, that justifies it. And that's what I expected to happen. But to lose 2 rounds decisively by getting your back taken, I did not foresee that happening one bit. And the fact that it was even a split decision and I laid a price like that, that's one of my worst bets of the year.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking. I obviously have like this written down, and I just kind of noticed looking through it now that the common theme in my worst bets of the year was laying chalk against someone who's the better wrestler. So that theme continued with Charles Jourdain versus Nathaniel Wood. I had Jourdain minus 140 over Wood. Wood looked like the clear favorite there. He won a unanimous decision. I thought Jourdain really impressed me against Burgos. I was on Burgos against Jourdain, so I was like, perfect. I got him here. Now I'm going to bet him. I end up doing that a lot where it's like, all right, I faded someone successfully, and now I think the market's overcorrecting it, so I'm going to do it back the other way. And it just didn't work out. Jourdain clearly hasn't fixed the holes in his grappling game. Nathaniel Wood looked like a clear favorite, so that's number 2 for me.
Yeah, and let's see. My next one was Bruno Silva over GM3. So another case where the odds were way too wide, but I thought that like, oh, he's just gonna touch him once and get him out of there. I mean, this guy just went 3 rounds with Alex Pereira. Like, what's GM3 got for him? And I love GM3. I mean, most submissions in middleweight history, really cool dude. But for some reason, I just thought that that was a terrible matchup for him. And then he's out there dropping Bruno Silva and finishing him. So, yeah, bad bet on Bruno Silva over GM3.
Next up for me, Edson Barboza plus 145 versus Bryce Mitchell. I had no intentions of playing the fight when when the line kind of was first out, but it just gotten so far on fight day that I was like, all right, it's gotten to be enough where I'm going to take the shot on Edson. Just Bryce just dominated him. Looked like a huge favorite, and yeah, that's all there is to it. Just got to own that one. Yeah, Barboza plus 145 probably could have been plus 300.
Similar to you being on Cater over Chikadze, and I was on Chikadze, I was on Bryce over Edson for that one. So, let's see what else. Oh, this one, Daniel Zellhuber. I mean, dude, listen to this. This kid, Daniel Zellhuber, like if you watch, because the tape is not the be all end all, but you watch the tape on him, and this kid looked like a fucking world beater. It looked like, yo, this guy might be a top 15 guy a year from now. He looked incredible. Goes in there with a James Krause guy. Maybe James Krause paid Daniel Zellhuber to not throw any strikes that fight, but all bullshit aside, like Zellhuber, you know, just didn't pull the trigger, didn't fight. It was kind of like, I mean, looked like a shell of the guy that I watched on tape. And the funny thing about it is when you talk about those overcorrections, I actually look forward to betting Zellhuber next fight. I mean, assuming they don't give him like some fucking undefeated Russian or something, but like I think give him another guy on Trey Ogden's level, and I'm gonna bet Zellhuber again because I really think it was just a debut shit your pants moment versus him actually sucking. Because the technique I saw in his regional and his contenders, I was like, God damn, like this kid's good. But I laid a price and the kid didn't fight, and that was one of my worst bets of 2022.
Yeah, I remember you and I talked about that one on DMs, and I was like on the border of gonna bet Zellhuber, and then the price kind of got away, and I was obviously very thankful I didn't. But for me, Mike Trizano minus 200 versus Almeida. I thought Trizano was better everywhere. I thought he'd have the grappling upside. He just went out there and kind of laid an egg. The only saving grace is I had the under 2.5, and Almeida ended up knocking him out. But I think Trizano minus 200 there. That was another time where I tried to do. I I had Hakeem Dawodu over Trizano earlier in the year, and I was like, boom, got Trizano. Now it's going to swing back the other way, and I bet Trizano against this guy who's debuting in the UFC, and it didn't work out. So that's another one for me that is rough looking back.
So let's see what else. Oh, and last but not least, Dominic Reyes against Ryan Spann. Like, so that was a really bad bet because in my eyes, So usually I don't bet guys that are coming off multiple brutal knockout losses. Like that's just I just don't do that. So I already went against my rule there. But I was justifying it in my eyes, being like, well, Dom's only lost to champions, John Jones, Jan, Yuri. He's only lost to champions, and he's beat every non-champion he's fought. Like he might lose to the Jones and the Yuris, but he ain't gonna lose to Ryan Spann. He lost to Ryan Spann worse than he lost to any of those guys. So I mean, like, goddamn, that was a horrendous bet. So yeah, I had to learn the hard way on that one. So that concludes my worst bets. You got any other worst bets?
The only one I had left written down was Askar Askarov minus 276 versus Kai Kara France. I ended up getting a great line there. It closed like minus 450, but obviously you don't want to be losing minus 275 bets. He clearly couldn't dominate KKF in the grappling like I thought he'd be able to. So KKF ended up getting a title shot out of it. And yeah, that was a bad one for me, but that's the last of my bad ones. I'm looking forward to reminiscing about some of the more fun ones.
Yeah. So the best bets. My first one, Ngannou plus 130 over Gan. So a lot of people that bet on Gan and that were really pissed were trying to, do this whole, well, you didn't predict him to wrestle him. You predicted him to knock him out. Therefore, and it's like, to me, I was like, okay, I bet on Ngannou's fight previously against Stipe. I bet him both times against Stipe. But the second time, don't y'all remember that he suplexed Stipe Miocic? Like, he actually showed some wrestling against a fucking D1 wrestler in Stipe. So to me, I wasn't thinking of it in terms of, okay, we need a first round knockout. We need this, we need that. I was just like, just go out there and give me a championship performance, whatever it takes. I'm getting plus 130 on the baddest man on the planet. That's it. Period. Point blank. So whether it played out how I expected it to, I don't give a shit. I cashed a plus 130 on the baddest man on the planet. So that's my first best bet of the year.
Yeah, that's another one I was on the other side of. I had gone at like minus 115. Obviously, I didn't factor in Ngannou's wrestling enough, but it was like a round or two in, and I was like, oh, this is going well. Then once it got to like that third round, I was like, I might be on the wrong side of this one. And then clearly, I think Ngannou even fought that fight hurt. So if they ran that back, Ngannou would be a clear favorite. But number one for me, I'm going to go with, let's see, I'm trying to go in order here. Lupita Godinez at minus 157 over Ariane Carnelosi. Like, she legitimately looks minus 1,000 there. So I know it's not like a super high profile fight, but in terms of like best bets, that one has to be super high for me. Because if they ran that back, I would lay whatever on Godinez. She just dominated bell to bell, just better everywhere. So minus 157 on that was a gift.
That was a beautiful bet. My next one was Joe Anderson Brito plus 250 over Andre Fili. I actually bet on Brito his first fight against Algio. Super close fight. Came down to, a back take in the third round, but I didn't give up on him. I didn't, I was like, dude, I actually think this kid's a good prospect. And I took him plus 250 against Fili. And I saw people talking about how this is an utter mismatch. And I'm like, dude, Fili fights close with literally everybody. Like, every Fili fight's like a split decision for the most part, unless he's getting finished, and he got finished here. So plus 250 on Joe Anderson Brito has to be one of my best bets of the year.
Yeah, that was a solid one. I was on the under 2.5 there, which I was like
Nice.
shocked. Was it like plus 140 or something like that? So I have fond memories of that fight too. Number two for me, Marcin Tybura plus 335 versus Romanov.
Beautiful.
I kind of felt like Romanov was a bit of a front runner, and he hadn't really fought anyone that had that grappling chops of Tybura. And that first round kind of went about how I expected. He got him down, he rode him out. I didn't think he was gonna be much of a finishing threat. And those rounds 2 and 3 came along. Romanov got more tired. He couldn't get Tybura to the ground, and all of a sudden, plus 335 was looking pretty damn good. So I'm going Tybura plus 335 as my second best bet.
Let's see. So my next best bet, we talked about it, Bilal over Luque and Bilal over Brady as well. Plus 160, plus 115. Just keep counting this guy out. Just keep giving me dog odds on him, and I'm going to keep riding that train until the wheels fall off, bottom line. So Bilal, and, even prior to that in December last year, he was like plus 220 against Wonder Boy. So we talk about the market catching up. The market has not caught up, and they are still disrespecting this man. So, I mean, like, let's say I lose the next bet, I'd still be like 9-1 my last 10 bets on Bilal, so I'm gonna keep betting him. But one that was really good was Nate Landwehr plus 275 over David Onama. I mean, that's got to be one of my best bets, not just of this year, but ever. And I heard the rumor about Kraus allegedly having millions on Onama. I don't know if there's any validity to that. Maybe, maybe not. But all I knew was, man, if you can just get me past this first round, I think we can take over. And that's what happened. So plus 275 Nate Landwehr. And I put 2 units on it. It wasn't like a half unit shot or anything. I put 2 units on it. That's got to be one of my best bets of 2022.
Yeah, that one was great, and that was a fun fight too. I would have loved to have been on Landwehr, big plus money there. For me, for number three, this is probably somewhat similar to your Bilal one. I've bet on Ilya Topuria in every single one of his UFC fights. I continued the trend at minus 135 versus Bryce Mitchell. I thought Topuria looked like a big favorite there. Obviously, he got the finish, was looking like the better striker, ended up submitting him. That was one of the best ones for me. And it's another one where it's like, if he does I'm going to keep betting him. If he does eventually lose, I'll be up huge regardless. So Topuria at number three, minus 135.
So Will brought up a good one. Mateus Sheffield plus 165 or Juan Adams, but both you and I were on it. I think I bet him at worse odds than that, but still dog money.
Yeah, I had like plus 185 on that one. That was sweet. He closed like a pick 'em and looked like a good size favorite.
And dude, your Tybura bet was a fucking masterful bet. Masterful bet. Like even let's say the score of the fight a draw. You make that bet 10 more times. You understand what I'm saying? So I think beautiful bet. Yeah. So obviously you guys know how I feel about Arnold Allen. Cashed him plus 110 against Hooker. And cashed him, I think, plus 110 or plus 115 against Cater. And you can blame it on the injury all you want, but I mean, before the injury happened, I was smiling literally every second of that fight because the guy's just beautiful to watch, man. I just love Arnold Allen. So, and in the Hooker fight, because I remember back in the day when I bet on Jason Knight, my friend, at like plus 140, plus 150, plus 160 to beat Hooker because Hooker shouldn't fight at 145. Hooker decided to go back to 145, and now you're taking on one of the studs in the weight class, and the stud is dog odds. Yeah, so I loved Arnold there. I loved Arnold against Cater. And keep giving me dog odds on Arnold, and I will keep betting him. So he's up there.
Yeah, I mean, I had him on Sodiq plus 126, I believe. That was not this year, but that was my experience betting on Arnold Allen. I obviously wish I did more often, but that's the one I can relate to. Next for me, Makhachev minus 148 against Charles Oliveira. Again, looked like a big favorite. Better striker, better wrestler. Submitted him too. Better cardio. I suspected. Didn't even need to get that far. Yeah, that was a great line in my opinion.
Absolutely. I was on that as well. I mean, that's I was talking about it on my show. Like, this might actually literally be the discount of the century. Reason being is, I mean, what do we normally pay for Islam Makhachev? Minus 500, minus 675, minus 1200, whatever. When you get minus one something on Islam Makhachev, like, I was like, Christmas came early. You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, that was a massive discount. And now with against Volk, who I actually think is a tougher matchup than Charles DuBronx, he's back up to minus 300 or whatever, right? Something like that. I got him like minus 160 something against Charles. Like, dude, that might actually be one of the all-time bets. Like, Islam minus 160 or minus 170 against Charles. Like, god damn, that is an amazing bet. One I also really, really liked. And both these happened on the same night. First was Daniel Santos plus 175 over Castaneda. I actually bet on Daniel Santos in his debut against Arce the night that we were there. And I lost on that one, but I didn't give up on him. I still thought he had something, and then I took him against Castaneda plus 175 because Castaneda, he's good, but his volume is super low. And there's one thing that we saw about Santos in that Arce fight: he's nonstop pressure, just going forward the entire time. I was hoping he could eventually get to him and break him. That's exactly what he did. So I cashed a plus 175 straight on Daniel Santos there against Castaneda.
That was an insane performance, dude. I will look back at that one as one of the crazier fights of 2022 for sure. For me next, I'm gonna go with Jake Matthews plus 160 versus Andre Fialho. Matthews
Nice.
closed the
Nice.
favorite there, so I got a ton of closing line value. I was like, look, I think Jake's the better technical striker. I think he has all the grappling upside. He's fought the better competition. Didn't even look to use his grappling upside. Went out there and won the first round on the feet, knocked him out in round 2. Obviously had one of the cooler moments of the year with the shrug after the knockout. That one is one of my more fond ones.
Yeah, and I hate talking about passing on leans because no one wants to hear about that, but I'm actually utterly disgusted with myself for passing on Semmelsberger because I did not buy into the Jake Matthews 2.0 talk whatsoever. So I'm actually really pissed I passed on Semmelsberger. But
Dude, I was literally I'm the same boat as you. And again, like no one wants to hear about it, but I even said like on my podcast, like I think at this point it's hard to justify this big price on Matthews. But anyway, you live and learn. We've clearly both had plenty of great bets this year.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And last but not least, my favorite bet was Yan Xiaonan plus 235 against Mackenzie Dern, man. I mean, like, I bet Yan Xiaonan every single fight. I have the utmost confidence and belief in her. Actually, earlier this year, I bet her plus 250 against Marina Rodriguez. Kind of thought I won, but like either way, one of those bets where you get plus 250 on a split, and I'll make that bet 10 times out of 10. So regardless who you scored it for, I was happy with that bet. But I got it back plus 235 against Mackenzie Dern. I mean, I thought the fight was, as long as she doesn't get submitted, I thought it was going to be an honest fight, and she didn't get submitted. She ended up in bad spots and survived them. So
Yeah.
fucking awesome. I'm happy to see her progression compared to like the Carla fight where she got in those bad spots and she got ran through. But I had faith because she had fought black belts in the past, like against Claudia Gadelia, and survived bad spots there. So I was hoping what happened with Carla wouldn't happen again. It didn't happen again, and she cashed a plus 235. So I'd say that's my last favorite bet of 2022.
Yeah, that was a sweet one. Great performance by her. For me, last one, I'm going to go with Dan Hooker over leg lock specialist Claudia Taylor. That was like one of the most highly debated fights on Twitter of the year, I felt like. And I was just pretty damn sure I was going to be on the right side. I mean, it's always going to be a possibility. Obviously, when you're handicapping these fights, you have to picture 1,000 iterations of it or 10,000 iterations of it. And I'm like, there's definitely times where Playlists would debar him. I just don't think it happens at anywhere close to the clip that the odds imply. And on the feet, it's like night and day between who's better. So I was like, as long as Hooker can avoid getting leg locked, I'm in the clear here. And I was getting a lot of pushback on that line because I was like betting it and then it would go up and then someone else would bet it. It would come back down. It was kind of like a game of ping pong. And at the end of the day, he was clearly the right side. He looked like a big favorite. Avoided that knee bar. And Playlist kind of got close in that first round at one point. I think he even tweaked Hooker's knee, but I had a feeling Hooker was going to be fine there. And on the feet, he went to work and dominated. So that was a fun trip down memory lane, but those are some of my favorites.
This is one of your favorites too. When you bet Dustin Jacoby against Dawoon Jung, that was an
Yeah,
amazing.
that was my biggest bet of the year for sure. That was another one where I was getting pushed back on the line. I ended up with like, yeah, that ended up being my biggest bet of the year. I ended up with like 7 units on Jacoby, which I've only went above 3 units, I think twice this year, and that was one of the times. And I think I had like 5 tipped and tracked, but I had 7 personally, and it was just I was at that fight in person, and it was sweet.
So last but not least, before we get out of here, let's talk about the champs this time next year. And if you don't have some for some of the weight classes, I understand because this is going to be tough, and these can be bold and just do what you got to do. So I'm gonna go first. I think the flyweight champ this time next year is going to be Alexander Pantoja. I'll tell you why. I think Davis and Figueiredo, I think the weight cuts are getting too brutal, and I think win or lose against Moreno, I think that's probably going to be his last fight at flyweight. I think he's going to move up. Moreno, on the other hand, I think Pantoja's beat him twice. I think Pantoja might be super hungry here, and Moreno's got a lot of stuff going on. His coach is under investigation. I know he's working with my boy Saif Saud, which is a great replacement, but I don't know. I think Pantoja has got that hunger, and I think 2023 is his year. I think by the end of the year, he'll be the champ. Let's actually go back and forth. So that's my flyweight. Who's your flyweight?
I don't have a strong opinion on that one. I think it could be Pantoja. It's one of those ones like this wouldn't surprise me if it's Figueiredo, Moreno, Pantoja. Like I don't know. If you put a gun to my head, I guess I'll say Figueiredo because, like you said, he doesn't make the weight super often. So I think he probably will only have 2 fights at flyweight this year, maybe 3. And it's one of those where like his trilogy with Moreno has been interesting because I passed the first fight. I bet Moreno the second fight. I passed the third fight. I kind of feel like I'd lean towards Figgy in a fourth fight. I don't know. I'm going to go with him. Would not surprise me if any of those 3 or 4 top guys.
Bantamweight champion. This is going to be a controversial one, but I think that this time next year, Marlon Chito Vera is going to be the UFC bantamweight champion. Like, I get it. Might not be the best striker, might not be the best grappler, but the guy's got something you can't teach. He's been paying his dues for so many goddamn years, got the most finishes in the history of the weight class. And about the backpack situation, because we know how good Aljamain is at that, I saw Jose Aldo backpack Chito Vera, and I mean, Cheeto wasn't in danger of being finished. It seemed like, okay, we get to the next round and you get right back to work. So I think he can survive the backpack and then come back there and put it on Aljo, actually. So, and I think also, I know these kind of terms are kind of, whatever, like, I just don't think he's going to be denied on the night. Kind of like Bisping wasn't denied against Rockhold. Kind of like you just see these legends have their moments, like Glover, etc. Like I think when you pay your dues to this extent, I just think the universe is going to align and let Chito Vera be champ.
Yeah, for me, this is interesting because I think Aljamain Sterling has had his hardest fight already with Jan. And I don't think that Jan could get back to a title shot in 2023 unless everything goes perfect for him. Because you have guys like O'Malley at the top of the division, you have Marab up there, you have Cejudo coming back allegedly. So and you have Marlon Vera up there, and even guys like Corey Sandhagen are never that far off. I don't think Jan gets back to the title this year. And I think Sterling matches up really, really well with Sean O'Malley. And he's never going to fight. Marab's never going to fight him. And then I think he matches up. Vera might be a harder fight for him than O'Malley, even though it's one of those things where it's like styles make fights. And I think style-wise, Vera might be the harder fight. But I do still favor Sterling there. I think Sterling, if you're not at Peter Yan level, grappling defense, it's really, really hard to beat him and to even contend with him. And even if you are on that level of defense, Sterling's distance striking metrics are really, really good. Like he's outlanded guys like 190 to 90. Like he puts up great volume. He's athletic. He's a strong wrestler, strong top game. I think he's still the champ this time next year, to some people's surprise.
So featherweight. This is the toughest one for me. Because I could totally see Volk still being champ this time next year, but we don't know what's going to happen in the Islam fight. Then there's the interim fight between Josh Emmett and Yair. So one of those guys could be champ, but I kind of see Volk beating both of them. But I think Arnold Allen, if he can make it to a title shot, I just think he's sneaky as hell. But I'm not ready to predict that yet because I don't know how the logistics are going to work. So I'm just going to play this one safe and say Volk is still champ this time next year.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you because Volk is moving up to 155. I personally think he's going to lose that fight. Either way, it's like if he's coming back down to 45, he's going to need a lot of time. He's going to need time to recover from the fight. He's going to need time to get back down to the weight. So I really only see him fighting at 145 once this year, maybe twice. And I think he'd be a pretty comfortable favorite against any of those guys. I think Volk's still the champ this time next year.
And lightweight, I mean, I don't see anybody touching this man Islam right now. Maybe down the line, but right now, no. I mean, listen, I love my Poiriers, my Chandlers, my Gaethjes, but that's not happening. So now we got to talk about the next wave: the Fizieves, the Sarukians, the Jalen Turners. All these guys. Like, okay, maybe I'm just not quite sure they're gonna make it to the title shot by the time next year ends. I say Islam keeps the belt next year.
Yeah, I think unless McGregor comes back and knocks him out. No, I'm just kidding. I think Islam's still the champ this time next year. I mean, if you look at the rankings, number one contender, Oliveira, he just looked like a big favorite. Poirier, he'd look like a big favorite. Gaethje, he would look like a big favorite. Dariush, I think, is probably one of the harder matchups for him. I still would favor Islam there. Fiziev, I think Makhachev would take him down and grind him out. And then as you start going up and up, those are guys that probably won't get a title shot next year. So, yeah, I'm going with Islam. You heard me say earlier in the show that he's my number one pound for pound. So I think he keeps his title next year.
It's my controversial one for 70s. You guys already know what it is. You guys know what time it is. Bilal Muhammad is going to be the UFC welterweight champ in 2023. Keep counting him out. It's his time now. And I think he's going to get it done. I think this guy's got insane work ethic. I think another guy that's not going to be denied. Another guy always counted out. And I'm riding that train until the wheels fall off, period, point blank. So either going to be dead right or dead wrong. And I know most think I'm going to be dead wrong, but I'm going to say it. I'm taking Bilal to be the welterweight champion in 2023.
Yeah, that's bold. I don't know, man. Like, I'm the opposite of you, where it's like, all right, I've been counting Bilal out, and it's like, all right, if I was counting him out against Luque and against Thompson, I got to count him out here against Usman and Colby and Chimaev. This one for me is pretty wide open because obviously they're running that back between Usman and Edwards next. So it's like, okay, if he knocks out, or sorry, if Usman beats Leon, do they do that fight again? Because like it's kind of a weird one because it's like Usman talks about retiring sometimes. Like Colby's always knocking at the door of getting another title shot. So it's like if Edwards wins again, I would favor Colby against Edwards. It's like if Chimaev's probably one win away, and Chimaev obviously has barely even looked like he has any flaws whatsoever in his game. This is, to me, is going to be the most interesting one. If I could only watch one weight class in 2023, this would be the one. I guess, gun to my head, this is tough. Gun to my head, I will say that Chimaev is the champ at the end of next year.
So what's interesting about that is I agree with you. However, I think it's going to be up a weight class. I think Chimaev is going to be the champ at 185, not 170.
I mean, yeah, I think he'd beat Pereira right now, honestly, or Adesanya.
Yeah, so that's my prediction. I think Chimaev wins the middleweight belt.
Damn, do I really get bold here and predict the double champ?
Fuck it.
Yeah, I'm going with Chimaev. I mean, I think he'd beat Pereira. If they fought next weekend, I would line Chimaev as like a good size favorite against Pereira. If Pereira doesn't knock him out on the first exchange, like Chimaev's going to take him down, and he's not going to get up. So Pereira's either going to be finished in round one, or he's going to be completely compromised for round two and probably have one more chance to knock him out before getting ragdolled again. Adesanya, I think similar. I mean, I like Adesanya a lot. I've bet on him multiple times in the past, but I think Chimaev is just all wrong for him. And Chimaev, even though I think he can make 170, I think he is the frame for 185 if he really commits to it. I would like to see him do that because I think I think he has an easier path to the championship at 185 than he does at 170.
Someone said Shavkat welterweight champ. He's got a big fight with Neil. Let's see. He's gonna be up there. That's for sure. If he wins this fight,
yeah,
he'll be in the mix definitely. All right. So next up, what weight class we got? We got 205. I mean, come on, y'all know who I'm picking at 205. Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill. And the funny thing about it is, I made some bets with friends that that Jamal Hill would win a belt before Ankalaev, and I know how fucking pissed they are right now because so. I mean, I might be pissed if Jamal loses next month, but I'm just saying the fact that it went the way it did. And I had a big bet on Ankalaev is the funny part about it, just to win against Jan. But now I might cash out on this. Like, listen, I've just, since day one, I've been on the Jamal train. I've bet on him every single UFC fight as well. When you see, like I said, a guy that's 6'4", but he's got that one-hitter quitter. I mean, you saw the way he launched Jimmy Crute. I mean, Jimmy Crute has lost some fights, but no one's ever done him like that. The Johnny Walker knockout, like Johnny Walker might be kind of chinny, but like the way he went flying was like, yo, you saw the heart Jamal showed in the Thiago Santos fight. And then also you've seen that he can land over 100 significant strikes. He can throw the strike counts of a little dude, and he's fucking huge. So he's got everything I like. And Glover, obviously, we love Glover. It's in Brazil. It's like, to win this belt, you're going to have to truly take it. And I'm not going to get off the train here. So I'm going to go Jamal Hill to be the UFC 205 champion in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, that one surprised me. And Full transparency, I have not watched the Ankalaev versus Jan fight yet, so I do not know what happened other than what people told me. I was so pissed off after I lost on Gordon versus Pimlet that I just went to bed. So I haven't seen it yet. So this is me predicting without having seen that fight, because I'm still going to go with Ankalaev. I just think he's the most well-rounded guy there. I mean, with Hill and Glover, it's just a fight I could see going either way. Hill could knock him out. Glover could grind him out and wrestle him, submit him potentially, but I actually have underestimated Hill's grappling in the past. So that's just a fight I'm looking forward to as a fan in general, not with a super strong opinion. And then Jiri, I mean, who knows with his shoulder? Like, he could. Dana White said he's going to get a title shot when he comes back. So it could be November, December next year. And all of a sudden, Yuri's in a title fight in which he's probably decent, like, I don't know, plus 200. So it's like, could you really be making that bad of a bet if you're picking Yuri? But I think Ankalaev, more well-rounded. He doesn't make mistakes, very technically sound. I'm going to go with him. I like his cardio over 5 rounds. I think a big thing for him is just fighting with a proper game plan. So I'm going to go with Ankalaev for 205.
And then for heavyweight, this is the toughest one for me because it's like I want to pick Ngannou, the baddest man on the planet. Like if Aspinall didn't have that injury, man, I was super high on Aspinall, and I still am. It's just I don't know how he's gonna come back from that. Like it seemed to go down in 16 seconds with a knee injury. Like who knows if he's even gonna fight next year, right?
Yeah, not the Minner kind of knee injury either.
Right. So, yeah, Gon's always in the mix. I could see them running it back one day. John Jones, if he decides to show his face, but since I don't have anything definitive, hopefully Ngannou works out his stuff with the UFC and he can be the champ this time next year.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Francis here too. I think obviously we talked about the Gon versus Ngannou fight. I think Ngannou's the favorite if they fight again. I think he probably beats Gon, maybe worse, even if he's fully healthy. But obviously a question mark there with his health, with his contract disputes with the UFC. Stipe, haven't heard from him. John Jones, I've heard a lot about him coming back, but nothing set in stone. Blaydes and Ngannou, we've seen it happen twice. Aspinall coming back off the injury. Yeah, so I'm going to go with Ngannou again for this time next year.
And then in the women's divisions, I mean, I've been riding the Yan Xiaonan train since day one, better every single fight, and I'll continue to better every single fight. Really want to see her and Weili Zhang run it. So I'm going Yan Xiaonan. And then for 25s, here's where it gets interesting because there's such a big weakness at the top with the grappling. I mean, don't get me wrong. Valentina can grapple. I'm just saying, can she grapple like Erin Blanchfield? I'm not convinced. I actually think, I mean, you saw who Erin's fighting next, right? If Erin beats Tyler Santos, she is going to get a title shot. And if she gets a title shot, I think she's got the goods to dethrone the great Valentina. And next week, I'm going to be doing my boldest predictions for 2023. And I'll just give a spoiler alert. One of those bold predictions is Valentina Shevchenko will be dethroned in 2023. And Andrew, I think Erin Blanchfield is going to be the one to do it. So I'm going Yan Xiaonan and Blanchfield to be my 2 women's champs. I don't know about the Nunes weight class because it's like, is Nunes going to retire or not? So I'll just go Nunes by default, but no confidence. But I really love my other bold picks for Xiaonan and Blanchfield.
Yeah, those are 2 solid ones. For me, he took the words right out of my mouth. Blanchfield's my pick to be the 125 champ this time next year as well. I mean, she's ranked number 10, she's ranked number 10 right now. She's getting a fight with number 2. If she wins that, which I think she's going to, I'm picking her to win. I haven't seen any odds for it yet, but I'm picking her outright. I think she matches up well with Valentina. So that's a fun one because it's going to be really interesting. For the longest time, Valentina was just kind of running through everyone. I mean, we saw her fight against Chukagian, Lauren Murphy, and it's like, all right, now we're getting some people here that really, really signify the evolution of the sport since when Valentina first became champ. And I think Blanchfield and Santos are prime examples of that. You have Manoa Firo in the mix, but I'm going with Blanchfield for 25. 15, I have no idea, man. It just so depends on like the matchups and the timing. Like we've seen Rose get her hand raised against Zhang twice, but we've seen Zhang beat Esparza while we saw Rose not even fight against Esparza. You've got Amanda Lemos not too far off the top, Marina Rodriguez, Yan Xiaonan. I mean, this is tough. I guess by default, I'll say Zhang because I feel like she's getting better too. Whereas I feel like some of those other fighters are more finished products. Like a Carl is a more finished product. A Rose is a more finished product. A Lemos is a more finished product. Well, I do see improvement from improvement by Zhang in her fight. So that's not a confident one, but I'm going Zhang 15, 25. I'm going Blanchfield 35. Same exact thoughts as you, Nunes until proven otherwise.
All right. And last but not least, before we get out of here, I got one more that I didn't tell you about. So I'm going to tell you about it now. So I want to give this out. You don't have to give one out, but I want to give out an award for the 2022 MMA Handicapper of the Year. So basically, this is a guy who, isn't out here doing 14 parlays and then acting like he's God's gift to betting. This is a guy that's betting underdogs, consistently beating the closing line, doing things the right way. And I have guys who are, sports betting geniuses, prodigies, telling me that this man is legitimate sharp. So, ladies and gentlemen, the 2022 Half the Battle MMA Handicapper of the Year goes to the man, Andrew Gombas.
Bro, that's so funny you said that. Look, I'm going to pull up my notes right now. I have comeback better of the year, Dan Levy. I was going to say at the end, let me throw in an extra category. I mean, I've told you this privately, but I want to say it publicly as well. I mean, like super, super impressive year. I'm looking at your page right now, up more than 50 units with a 25% return, which is freaking unheard of. That's coming off of the worst year you've ever had, where it seemed like you were second guessing yourself, where you told me you were second guessing yourself. And just to come back and have a year like that, I mean, it's insane, dude. So can't say enough good things. Again, appreciate the love. Appreciate you having me on. We're going to go on to do big, big things next year and beyond. Obviously, I mean, dude, we've been doing this now. What was this, like your 7th or 8th year?
Yeah, I'm 7-1, so 8th year.
8th year. This was my 5th year tracked. I mean, I remember back when I was in college, I tweeted at you and a couple other people saying like, hey, keep an eye out for, I was like probably 20 years old saying like, hey, I'm going to be a guy to look out for in the future. And you showed me a lot of respect back then, which I've always appreciated. So super fun coming on here, doing this end of the year show. Definitely looking forward to seeing what you have in the future. And yeah, let's do this again sometime, maybe even next year. Hopefully we both crush it again. And yeah, let's keep the money flowing and the good times rolling.
Absolutely. And it was good to hang out in Florida too. That was
Yeah,
fun.
hopefully we could do that again as well. Hopefully the UFC goes back to Jacksonville in April.
Definitely. So for all the fans watching, thank you all so much. Do me a huge favor. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'll be back actually next week to talk about the boldest predictions. You can follow Andrew at Bets and Picks MMA. For some reason, why is it like hard for everyone to say that fucking name?
I don't know. It's funny because I feel like that's one of like the generic like MMA better names. Like, but I was like, all right, what's a good name? I just got the notification on my phone. It was 5 years since I made the account, my Twitter account, like the other day. I used to have like MMA Knockout Bets as the title, and then I started working for CBS, and they wanted me to use my real name. But it took me back. I was like, what's a good name for MMA bets? I was like, Bets and Picks MMA. And so I've kind of just stuck with that ever since. Obviously, I like using my real name and face because it's better interacting with people. But I have fond memories of being a college kid being like, all right, I want to be an MMA better. What's a good name? Bets and Picks MMA.
You ever thought about going Andrew Gombas MMA?
Yeah, I pretty much was like, all right, I have a betting page. So I was like, I'll just make it my name and then bets. And we'll roll with that. And I've enjoyed that more because it's like I said, it's more personal. Obviously, I wasn't doing like podcasts and putting out content back then, but now that I'm doing it, obviously like making friends on here, building relationships, much better doing it with my real name and face.
For sure. So everybody follow him, Bets and Picks MMA on Twitter. You can find all his stuff there. Follow me, Best Fight Picks. Subscribe everywhere podcasts are found. Also, after this, leave me a comment. All that stuff helps the algorithm. They like to talk about the likes, the subscribes. You guys do us a huge favor by doing that. Again, I'll be back next week to talk about my boldest predictions for 2023. I'll have a special guest doing that. And then the week after, I'm going to literally recap every single bet I made in 2022, win, loss, and just, dissect the record, try to learn from it, and just try to give you guys content during this break. So appreciate all the support as always. Is there stuff to bet on in the next week? Because honestly, I like to say let's cash these bets, but I'm not sure what there is to bet on.
Yeah, MMA wise, Bet Online put a couple odds up for like Octagon 38, ACA 150. Nothing I'm interested in, but hopefully if hopefully people can get over for a month or so just betting football and hockey and basketball. Just be sure to be smart with your money over that time period. Don't forget where the real money's made, and always use good bankroll management.
Always, and discipline. And guys, thanks again. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.
Let's do it.